Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, an incredible life creator. And today I have with me Miss Sarah Snyder. Hey, Sarah.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
Yes, so excited to have you on and have you here in purple. Red's my favorite color, but purple's my second favorite. So just love the combination. I'm going to read your bio just so people can get to know you. So, Sarah Snyder is a financial strategist with a background in communications and project management. From rural Papua New Guinea to mega city China to middle America, she has enjoyed a variety of cultures and places. Each person and each business is unique, and she believes it is important to listen and ask good questions. Sarah and her husband Bob have seen firsthand how problems in finance can lead to all sorts of problems. So, in addition to serving their clients, they seek to build a team of financial professionals who help people dream again, walk in freedom, live generously, and maximize their impact. Sarah and Bob love living in the community. Their relationship with God is foundational to their lives. They live with their daughter in small town Missouri, just down the street from Sarah's parents. In spare moments, you can find her lost in a novel or creating art. Sarah also loves exploring mountains, oceans, and new cities. So, wow, from Papua New Guinea to everywhere. So, I'd love to hear your story. Tell us about you.
Oh, the tell me about you question is huge. But so my parents were missionaries. That's how I started off in Papua New Guinea. They were with Wycliffe Bible translators. And honestly, I thought my entire life, like overseas missions was what I would be doing. And I did do that for a season. Did not see myself in the financial space necessarily. Uh, but I'm thankful to be here. And so Papua New Guinea, moved to the US for college, actually did my undergrad in the United States, but a year in Japan, then did my master's in England and France. I've got family in France, moved to China a number of years after graduating, kind of after some nonprofit work. And that's where I met my husband, Bob. So his real name is not Bob. Um, but Bob is what he goes by with everybody simply because it's a lot easier to pronounce.
Mhm.
And he honestly is the entrepreneur between the two of us and brought me into the entrepreneurial space. But when we moved to the United States, we started a tech startup company. And as our roles there were wrapping up, we got to thinking, what do we do next? And we realized several things. One is we needed help with our own personal finance because we had done a decent job at saving, but nothing much else besides that. And so we also realized that, like a lot of business owners, we hadn't really thought beyond our own business. We hadn't really thought kind of future or long term, or what do we do? Like, how do we think about different types of money? How do we think about how do we protect our family, our peace of mind, our future? And so when we were introduced to the financial industry and to a vision of no family left behind when it comes to understanding money, we're like, well, we could do that. And so that's kind of the fast version in a nutshell of who I am and how I got here.
Got it. So, um, the things that you're doing now in the financial space, how did the things you did before help you in this space? What
Yeah,
tools did you bring forward?
absolutely. So people might think finance, and I think a lot of eyes glaze over. People get scared, people get bored, they think numbers. But really, the personal finance space is a whole lot more than that because you're working with people. Finance touches every aspect of our lives. So many people end up sick in the hospital, depressed because of money issues, or fighting with their loved ones, or divorce because of money issues. And so when you're working in the personal finance space, you have the honor and privilege of working with people with something that is very real and near and dear to their hearts, with dreams and goals and a future. And so it's about communicating, it's about understanding people and working with people to understand, where are you at now? Where do you want to go? And honestly, a lot of times people haven't thought about where they want to go. And
Mm.
then what are the steps to get there? Because for so many of us, this is a taboo topic. We don't talk about finance, just like so many people don't talk about God or politics, right? And so the ability to talk about it, to think about it, and to provide basic financial education, which we're missing in our nation, these are some of the skills that were already developed from my previous experiences, because I have my master's is in design and communications management. I worked in the nonprofit for a long sector where I got to work with government officials, with academics, with researchers, with a wide range of individuals, Senate chiefs of staff, with congressmen, et cetera. And so you learn the skills of communication, you learn the skills of bringing people together, of communicating concepts that could be difficult, but in simple ways. And so, I mean, it's a continuation of that journey in so many different ways.
Wow. So interesting. So now, who are your customers and what are they coming to you for?
We've got a range. So I would say you could almost look at two different main groups of people. One would be individuals and families. And so your traditional financial industry is going to say, hey, do you have $200,000 to invest? If no, I'm so sorry. We're not doing that because we have a vision of no family left behind. And so if somebody says, I want to understand money and I want to make a difference for myself and my family, we'll work with them regardless. And we get to serve, whether somebody's young in that wealth building phase, they have years ahead of them, where if they learn some basic rules of money, they can really make money work for them and stop some of the negative cycles of where money can actually work against you. Years and years to do that. If somebody is married, they have kids, they need to be thinking about, are they making sure their kids are going to be okay in case the worst case scenario happens to them? If somebody is kind of, mid to late career, how do we think about protecting what somebody has built up over the years? Make sure that is going to continue to who they want that to continue to. If somebody's moving into retirement, exactly the same thing. How do we make sure that somebody doesn't outlive their money, that they don't lose due to a recession? So individuals and families, regardless of where they're at in their life, regardless of how much or how little they have, that's one category. And the other category is business owners. And so we can help business owners with attracting and retaining talent and paying less in taxes.
Oh, well, that's interesting. How do you do that? Because there's a lot of talk about, there's jobs, but no one's wanting to work them.
Well,
About
sometimes,
that. How do you attract talent that wants to come to work and enjoys work and is adding value when they feel valued?
right. I mean, sometimes like it's a mix, right? Some of it is what we can help. Sometimes it's the culture somebody's creating. But in terms of where can we can help think through putting in place basically like executive bonus plans, where working together with the owner of the small company or of the company, what kind of culture are they wanting to put in place? What's important for them? Kind of what period of vesting do they need to have in place? And how can we actually offer something to them that is not going to be offered at most other businesses, because that's attractive. So if you have somebody saying, oh my goodness, you've got some benefits that I want, and you've got a great culture, great values, I'm happy to work for you, even maybe if they're not being paid quite as much as somewhere else.
Mhm,
And then if I'm not fully vested until 5 years from now, that helps to attract and retain, because somebody wants to have that full amount that they've been setting aside and that their employer has been setting aside for them.
mhm,
And so some of those strategies too are ones that actually will allow the company to pay less in taxes as well, just the way that those get set up. And so that's one area of attracting, retaining talent, paying less in taxes. You can also set in place strategies for the owners themselves. For example, another one would be like a key employee plan, where if in this scenario is protecting in the events of losing a key employee, to where then there is money available and time available to be able to replace that individual. So lots of things that you can do there.
yeah, exactly. And a lot of times, especially small businesses, they don't think about that, especially the
Mhm.
ones that are almost solo entrepreneurs. But if something happens to them,
Yeah,
there is no business. So they
right.
they need to have that key man, woman. I'm not sure what it's called,
Policy in place.
policy in place.
Also, too, if somebody's at that stage where they're basically a solopreneur, really the strategies used for families and individuals fits for them too. And so often they are not saving for their future because it's a struggle to get through to now, right? To each day it can be a struggle. Debt can be a struggle. How can I possibly save? often there's a temptation to take an old retirement plan too and fund the new business.
Mhm.
What percentages of new businesses are actually succeeding? And so taking a moment to pause, thinking about now and the future, and any kind of old retirement plan, what can I do to protect that so that it's positioned to continue to grow? Avoid using it now if at all possible. And then just like people can be really consistent in kind of maybe their day-to-day management of their books and of their accounting, well, how can they also be consistent in saving towards their own personal future as well? And so actually I've specialized in protected asset classes where somebody could basically, it's like building an emergency fund that they could use, but is also could be used in retirement to supplement their retirement income. And so usable now and later, but growing, tax deferred, accessible, tax free. And sometimes where actually the same money can be used twice, could be used for financing something for their business while it continues to actually mirror the market and grow for their future. And so a lot that a solopreneur can do as well.
Yeah. Well, that sounds wonderful. Double money.
Yeah,
Double money with the same money.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
It
mean,
is
that's what my
better.
husband and I are doing.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and it is, as an entrepreneur, we see an idea and we just like, yeah, we want that, and we go looking for wherever the money is.
Uh-huh.
We want to get it done, right? And like,
Right. And
not
sometimes
such a
we
great
cringe.
idea.
My neighbor here took all of her retirement money to start a shop, and the shop is barely making ends meet, and she has nothing for her future. And she's basically also handing the shop off to somebody else and moving on now to something different. And it hurts just to see that.
Oh
And so,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. So why do you think it is that people don't like to talk about money, or they shy away from it, or um, you know, and I know in our family, we didn't really talk about money, and we were specifically told you never ask somebody how much they make or anything like that. I mean,
Move to China, you might get over that. Like one of the always the questions are, how heavy are you and how much do you make?
really?
Yes.
Those are two like no ask questions in the United States, right? You
Oh
don't
my
ask someone
goodness.
their weight or how
I
much they money they make.
I learned how to say very fast in Chinese. That's my secret. Uh, but that is one of the issues is we're taught not to talk about money, and we don't have a good financial education for the most part. So in high school and college, there might be some elective courses, but not many. And I've met people who have accounting degrees, they're working in accounting or other business related degrees. They've gone through a lot of finance education, but they've not gone through personal finance education. Like even people in that space don't know the basic rules of like the rule of 72, how can you get your money doubling for you or maybe doubling against you when it comes to debt.
Mhm.
Like where can you push your money to grow? What types of money should be put in different places? And then how do you avoid paying unnecessary taxes? Basic rules of money. We are taught a whole bunch of things that we never use, but we're not always taught financial education. That can make it hard to talk about it because there's a lot of fear. I've sat down with people making 20,000 plus a month, and I've sat down with people making 2,000 a month, and both can be afraid and thinking, I don't have enough. Will I have enough? Can I make it? And so understanding and having a money framework can be big, and having a plan in place based off of that money framework is important. Recognizing that plans can change. Personal finance is a lot like GPS, right? You've got a goal and you're going, and then life hits you or changes, and you just recalculate. That's okay. And
Mhm.
then another piece is, yeah, so those are the two big ones I would say is lack of financial education and shame. Yeah. And perhaps you could almost say a third reason is like financial professionals, like I started off saying, often won't sit down with somebody if they don't have a lot, which simply means there are fewer resources. And so we're often trying to learn from our parents, maybe learn from their parents, and then bits and pieces from internet research. So it's very important to be able to identify a financial professional, particularly somebody who's non-captive. What that means is they don't represent one single company or set of products. They can represent multiple companies because that means they're less biased. They're not trying to sell one particular product, but then they can bring their expertise and their knowledge. because honestly, like most Americans are busy and hardworking and don't have the time to do the deep dive themselves. Yeah.
That's for sure. Now, I know sometimes, like in a marriage, especially, there's one spouse that kind of takes care of the money and the other spouse doesn't. And sometimes uh, a spouse dies or there's a divorce or whatever, and all of a sudden the other person is just lost because they never had to do anything with the money.
Mhm. Yeah.
Speak to that. How should we help that?
So I firmly believe when I sit down with people, you need both spouses there. Every once in a while, the one spouse is really not interested and all of the decisions really are made by one person. Then that's unfortunate. Especially women tend to get left behind when it comes to understanding money. And I sat down with an 80-year-old not too long ago, and she said, honey, like that's what husbands were for. Like I have, and and that's often the case, especially maybe with some older generation women, but women live older than men do.
Mhm.
Then they are left behind with no understanding about how to access whatever resources their husband has built up and saved for them.
Mhm.
Probably often people don't have wills and trusts in place. And so then there's a process of going through the court system to get access to things. Sometimes it can be a couple of years. And then they have to borrow and live off of the support of others, or maybe go get a second or a third job. And so it's so important to learn at least the foundations and the basics for everybody, whether that's the husband or the wife, what we do for spouse we're looking at here. And so where was I wanting to go with that? I could go many different directions. My thoughts just paused. You look like you wanted to say something there.
Yeah, so I was just asking, why it's important for both to know, and so you're not just left in that position of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that exactly is why. So that you're not locked out of your bank account or can't access the retirement funds or don't know where the life insurance is at and how to get it, if it's there at all. And there needs, like, both spouses need to be a part of financial planning for their family, even if one takes the lead.
Mhm.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and you spoke about life insurance. So how important is life insurance? Because it's one of those things it's so intangible. Like, yes, I could die early, but maybe I won't. So you're kind of like betting on whether or not you're going to die early. And you're thinking, is it worth spending money every month for this life insurance?
Is it worth spending money every month for your car insurance? Right? If you crash and that car is totaled, I mean, first, this is the law, but if you crash and the car is totaled, like the expense of getting a new car is out of range for most people.
Mhm.
We don't have any problem paying for our car insurance. Why do people have a problem paying for their life insurance? Because aren't our lives the most important things that we have? Aren't our spouses the most important things, or our kids? Because if I were to pass away early, I have a husband and a 4-year-old daughter, and my husband is adjusting to the United States. He's Chinese, like I shared with you. They would be devastated. But because I have life insurance in place, and here's an important number, the important financial education number everyone needs to know is your insurable need. When that number, once that is in place, if I were to pass away, they'd be okay for like 10 plus years.
Mhm.
And so real quick, I also want to touch on different types of insurance and purposes for those, but insurable need, there's an acronym that's really worth writing down or remembering. It's DIME-F. D stands for debt. And especially like those kinds of, often people think I die, oh, my family will be fine, but debt, it passes on many times, many, many times. So D stands for debt. I stands for income. If somebody has young kids or people who depend on them for their finance, then that's going to be about 10 years worth of income is the normal. So 50,000 times 10 or 100,000 times 10. M stands for mortgage. The house may be considered an asset by many people, but it's also debt that gets passed on if one spouse is to pass away and leave another. And so the mortgage piece would cover that expense. And then we have E, which is for education. This is optional. I've talked with parents who said, you know what, my parents paid my way through college. and it was not good for me. I did not learn how to work. I want my kids to work their way through college. I've had parents who have said, I worked my tail off to get through college and I was miserable and I don't want my kids to ever have to go through that. I want to pay for them. So it's optional. There's not a right and wrong, but that's the E. And then final expenses is the F. And final expenses are often in the 10 to 20,000 range, and for a relatively simple kind of burial process, end of life process. And so if somebody can calculate their insurable need, they have that first piece of knowledge to start making a plan on that side. Now you've got term insurance. The intention with term insurance is cover yourself during those years of your highest insurable need. And you are saving at the same time so that by the time it expires, you're basically self-insured.
Mhm.
Permanent insurance falls into a few different categories, but basically permanent insurance is there for your life and can be used for legacy planning. And there are also different types of insurance that actually can be used for the benefits while you're alive of supplementing your income, of maybe operating almost like a long-term care alternative. And so there can be multiple purposes for insurance, and it is one of the most important things that somebody can have.
Wow. And then talk about annuity. So some people get an annuity. So talk about what that is and why someone would want one.
There are multiple kinds of annuities, and then some you'd be like, those are amazing, and some are those like, don't, keep as far as I can. And so the kind I am a huge fan of are called fixed indexed annuities. And what those do is you've got a floor of 0 in place, meaning that if your money is in there and the market tanks, you never lose. If you're in a variable annuity, it's exactly what it sounds like, up and down with the market. If you're in a fixed index annuity, you've got a floor in place, but it's following an index. It's doing market mirroring. You've got growth potential in kind of that. Actually, it's a relatively wide range depending on which specific strategy you're going for. So maybe kind of in the 4 to 12% return range, again, depending on your strategy and market performance. And so then you've got that growth potential. And with a fixed index annuities, especially the ones I work with, you don't give up control over your money. So if you don't use it, it goes to your loved ones. If you do use it, you use it. And you can have growth-oriented ones, or you can put in place a personal pension plan for yourself where you never, ever have to worry about outliving that bucket of money, because they are guaranteeing that once you turn on income, just like a pension plan that you might have built up through work, which very few people have these days, once that income is turned on, it's income for life.
Mhm.
Again, if you pass away, it's still there, it goes to your loved ones. If the money leaves, expires before you do, they pay you every year for the rest of your life. So fixed indexed annuities, I have one, I love it. I think that they can be an important portion of somebody's portfolio. I think we need to be thinking of diversification across multiple different types of strategies, and my preference is multiple types of strategies where we don't pay taxes in the future. We get those out of the road, don't worry about those in the future. And FIAs absolutely have a place to play there. Yeah.
So, what should we be teaching our children, and how early should we start teaching our children?
Early, I would say. Like, I'm trying to figure out, again, my daughter is 4, some basics of money even now. And I think our children need to learn the importance of hard work and the importance of saving for themselves and saving first. I believe an importance of tithing, of giving to the Lord as well for children to learn. And once they're in their teen years, for sure, so the rule of 72, I mentioned that earlier. It's a simple mathematical formula, and it says if you divide into 72 any interest rate that you have, and that will give you the approximate number of years to double your money. So if teens start learning concepts like this, where if they can get their money somewhere where it's growing for them, say right now we've got really nice high yield online savings accounts that they could access. And those are, say, I've got a money market account that's at 5.3%. So 72 divided by 5.3%, that didn't work. Let me try again. My calculator does not always work. Yeah, it's not working. Why is it not working here? Let me pull up An online calculator. Okay, 72. That's weird. Maybe I'm just in a fluster from being online and trying to do this live. Oh, man. Okay. 70. Well, let's do easy math, right? So simple savings account, 1%, usually a lot less. And so at 1%, we're going to be looking at 72 years to double that money. So 72 divided by that 1%. And so if we have 72 divided by the 5.3%, there, got it. 13 years, it will double every 13 and a half years. That's a lot better than every 72 years. And if somebody can be saving where their money is then growing for them at 10% instead, then we're looking at that money to every 7.2 years doubling. And so starting with teenagers, this one rule of money can be thinking, okay, well, I want to be saving money for, for college, maybe they're early teens. If they're just putting it in a standard savings account where it's like not even keeping up with inflation, right? That's sad. Where they could be putting it somewhere where it might be growing in that 5% range. It's not great, but it's a lot better. And they're thinking this way. And they're thinking about how do we save for the future. And they're thinking that once I get my credit card, because once they're out of high school, moving to college, everybody's going to be sending them credit card applications. What are interest rates there these days? Like they're often in the 20 to 30% range, aren't they? So 72 divided by, let's say 28, that's pretty common. So 72 divided by 20 or 25, did 25 that time, 2.88. If somebody has debt and it got that 25% interest rate, that will double for them every almost 3 years. So a simple $1,000 debt becomes 2,000, becomes 4,000, becomes 8,000. And it can really, really cause a lot of damage. And so think concepts around debt are important to teach starting early on. And then concepts even around life insurance. So when somebody's young and healthy, they might think I don't need it, but they can get the best rates. And then there's something called living benefits right now. And living benefits, what those do is they say, rather than just being death insurance, while I'm alive, if I qualify and I don't want to qualify, I can access a portion to the entire amount. And so if somebody has terminal illness with 12 months or less to live usually, or critical illness, such as like a kidney disease or chronic illness, where they can't do 2 of the 3 acts of daily living, they can access a portion to the entire amount, which can be life-saving. Like we had a gal who was in her 20s as a part of our agency a number of years ago, and she had an inexpensive term policy plan with living benefits. It was, I think, like a $200,000, $250,000 plan, very cheap. It was like $15 a month-ish. Well, she was then diagnosed with cancer. And because she had it, she was actually then able to go for experimental treatment that her health insurance wouldn't have covered. She didn't have to keep working during that time, and she was able to kick it. And so like there can be multiple reasons, even on the life insurance piece, to be young, you're young, and to take that out while you're young. And so financial education and thinking through the personal finance side, starting young is, I feel like, important, because as a nation, we have a value for independence, and we are losing our financial independence, and we need to get that back.
So when you work with people, what are some of the questions that you ask? Because again, people sometimes are coming in and they're like thinking about, okay, how's this going to go? So what kind of questions are you asking them, and what kind of information are you trying to pull to put together a plan for someone?
I need to know what's keeping them awake at night. What's important to them? And each person's going to be different. And so what's keeping them awake at night? If there was a recession right now, like say in 2008, could somebody say comfortably that they would be okay, that they're not at risk of losing everything? If somebody were to pass away yesterday, how would their family be financially right now? If somebody were to become disabled or sick and they couldn't work anymore, do they have a plan in place where they could still have money coming in to take care of themselves and their family? Do they have a plan in place to pass on what they've built and the values that they have to the next generation? Because generational, like, wealth transfer is a place where a lot of resources just like disappear.
Mhm.
These are the kinds of questions we can ask people. And so what's important to somebody, what is their risk tolerance? Some people love the gamble and others want to play it safe. And so what they do might look a little different. And how important are some of the short-term goals versus some of the long-term goals? How do we think about each? Because often if somebody is exclusively focused on, say, getting out of debt or building their emergency fund or improving their cash flow, it's almost like they're in a canoe with just one oar. And then what happens?
Well, they go crooked.
Oh, cricket, you turn in circles.
Yeah.
But if somebody is exclusively focused on putting in place proper protection and building wealth for their future and like passing on to the next generation on legacy planning, it's like they have the other or only. And so people need to think about, how do we do both?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so those are some of the things we cover.
Cool. And then wills, you mentioned about wills. Why should we have a will?
So if we don't have a will and we pass away, any idea what happens?
What happens?
What happens? Okay, what happens is the court gets to decide. And so if you have legal documents such as life insurance, for example, that has a beneficiary name associated with it, or a retirement plan, that's decided already. That directly goes to whoever your beneficiary is. And then if you don't have a beneficiary on it, it's not decided. If your bank accounts, they don't necessarily automatically go to your family. Your children, you might think that your family will step in and take care of them, and they might want to, but the court system gets to decide who actually gets to keep them. Maybe you want grandma to have your kids and you've talked with grandma about it, but she's older and maybe she doesn't have a lot of income. Maybe there's an uncle who's younger and healthier, and suddenly when you pass away, he's thinking about all of the inheritance that comes with taking care of your kids, and he shows up out of nowhere and fights to have custody of them. And they could end up in the foster system for a period of time. So the worst case scenario is having no will in place and everything goes through the court system. What's a lot better is to have a will in place. And a will is easy. Like, those should be free. Shouldn't have to pay for a will. You do need to get a couple of witnesses that are not going to be benefiting in any way from what you have. And keep a copy, keep your original copy somewhere safe. And so that's good. That's the easiest for us right now. But the next piece would be a trust.
Mhm.
And so have you had much interaction with a trust or a trust versus a will at all?
No, you talk about it because maybe
Okay.
people haven't. So,
Yeah, okay. So a trust, a lot of people think, I'm not wealthy, I don't need a trust. Well, a trust actually can make sense if somebody has kids, if they have rental properties, if they have a business. These are different scenarios where you don't have to be really wealthy, and a trust can absolutely make sense. And they can start around 1,200 for a simple revocable trust. And what it does is it removes everything from the probate process, which is that court system process. And so you don't have to worry about bits and pieces being fought over by family members. You have a trust, you have a trustee,
mhm,
and it makes that process smooth and private. And so while people are still alive, they can change it. They can fund their assets into it. When they pass on, it basically becomes irrevocable, where the trustees then are responsible for implementing what's in that trust.
mhm.
But then instead of, say, 2 years through the court system, it's taken care of. So
Right. So
that's,
it's all specified in there. So it says this person gets this percentage of this or whatever. It specifies everything.
it does. And you can even specify values and when your kids get money. So you might say, hey, I've got 3 kids. I want it to be divided between them evenly, but maybe they should access only a certain, say, 25% at 18, because what 18-year-old is going to make good decisions with a large inheritance?
Mm.
Actually, like the lawyer I often work with tells a story of an 18-year-old who inherited and then spent it all on buying snowmobiles for all of her friends.
Oh no.
And so, like, maybe they only get a certain percentage by 18, and then maybe by 20, or 25, then they get half of the remainder. And then maybe by 30, they get the rest of it. And then the trustee is freed up from their responsibilities.
Mhm.
And so you can also say, like, I have somebody I know who's like, well, for my grandkids and great grandkids and great great grandkids to get access to grandpa's wealth and what he's built up, his legacy, they need to attend church. They cannot have a criminal record, and they need to start a business because those are values that are important to him. You can also include that sort of thing in your trust.
Wow, very specific then.
Right. You can get quite specific. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And then you're not worried. Like you have the peace of mind of knowing that you know what's going to happen afterwards. Yeah.
Got it. So, tell me about your faith and how that kind of integrates with your business and how you live your life.
My faith is important. And I think I was sharing earlier, like I always imagined being a missionary for my full life. And so, but what I love about being a business owner is like you have the freedom to share your faith as well. I love that I get to pray for people that I sit down and work with and encourage them. We had actually not my client, but a client within one of my colleagues' clients where she went through some incredible disasters in the last couple of years. But she had been set up with a plan that allowed her to get debt free, build an emergency fund, start saving for her future so that when those disasters hit, she had a cousin's 5-year-old son pass away. Her aunt was diagnosed with cancer, multiple, 3, 4, 5 different events. She had the emergency fund to pay for the funeral, to go and visit the aunt and uncle. And my colleagues gathered around with her and prayed for her throughout that entire process. And she said, when my faith wasn't there, their faith was there. And I love it that we can do that. One of my own clients, when I first sat down with her, was terrified to talk about money, even though she was brilliant. And we actually would pray together and put in place stronger, healthier beliefs around money and what does God say about money and what does God say about you and what's his value for you, to where now a year and a half, 2 years later, there's a confidence and a hopeful expectation for her future when we talk about that. And so that's one of the best things about being a business owner is just the ability to pray for people and to share with them God's goodness.
Wow. And then how long have you been married now?
Only 8 years, not that
8 years.
long. Yeah.
So, how do you put together two people from two different places and make it all work?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm still asking that sometimes. Um, I mean, I'm in the entrepreneurial space because he is and he loves it. And then the Chinese culture is, I think, a lot more fluid and flexible than the Western culture. And so maybe I'm learning some of those skills. Maybe not just digging my heels in and becoming more stubborn. Um, yeah, I mean, it's nice to be able to work together with your family, to be able to build something. It's not always easy, but it gives you the ability to create dreams together, to pursue those together. So my strengths are more, especially in English, working with people. He loves dreaming and systems and the latest tools and technologies. Sometimes where I'm like, no, please, I don't want to make it one more change. But he's constantly thinking about what's the best systems that we could implement right now? How do we improve our tracking? How do we improve, how do we put in place a growth system is the current one we're working on together, where I get to sit down with people and say, what are your financial dreams and goals and how do we get there? So that's a little bit of how we do it. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So, if people wanted to work with you, how do they connect with you? Do you have a website or
Yeah.
social media or something where they can find you?
So my website is simply, it's https colon and then that / Sarah-Snyder.com. So easy, Sarah-Snyder.com. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. Let's just see if what's the easiest way to find me would be my LinkedIn would be the LinkedIn kind of regular LinkedIn URL and then the / Sarah K. Snyder is my LinkedIn handle. And those are two great ways. Yeah, absolutely. That's probably where I'm at the most is my website or LinkedIn.
Right. And you can work with anyone anywhere. It doesn't have to be like in the States.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually right now, like we're expanding and we're looking for people with character and integrity who want to make a difference in people's lives. If you have skills or background in business or entrepreneurship or working with teams, those are skills that we're particularly looking for. We can teach the finance side.
Mhm.
Yes, it'll be a steep learning curve, but it's learnable. And so it's the quality people that we're looking for. And we are remote. So before COVID, this was an in-person industry where you drove and you met people in person at an office, at a coffee shop. Not anymore. Like
Mhm,
that pivot to online means I get to work with people from California to Massachusetts,
mhm.
which is incredible.
Right. So you're also looking for other people to work with. So anyone
Mhm.
who's needing a new profession,
Yeah.
this is a place where you find your passion and purpose. Maybe this is it.
Maybe you get to help people. You get to build a business that has a real shot at financial freedom and time independence, which can't be said with a lot of industries. A lot of places you have the ability to make a lot, but you're busy,
Mhm.
or you have a lot of time, but not necessarily making a lot. This is still a business. It's not necessarily easy, but it is simple, and it is something where you actually can achieve both of those in a place where you're changing lives.
Beautiful. Well, now I have a personal question for you.
Yeah,
Gives you the
absolutely.
most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
Can you ask that one more time?
What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
Well, I love my daughter. And so I think just spending time with her and watching her grow. She asks great questions. Even when she, like 2 years ago, at 2 years old, we're sitting in church and listening, and the pastor's talking, and she's a little bit bored, but she goes, Mama, we're not doing nothing right now, are we? No, we're not. She's like, we're listening, aren't we? I'm like, yes, we are. And so as she grows and asks questions and we play together and she's got creative ideas, like that's very fulfilling. And then I'm an artist. Like I love anything creative. I love painting, I love reading, I love writing. And so, and like you mentioned in my bio, I haven't done this recently and I need to. But one of my very favorite things to do is just walk through a new international city. I like to stop at coffee shops and just sit and journal and dream and pray
Mhm.
and then keep exploring. And so, but that's not right now. Right now would be, I'd say, my daughter and reading.
All right. Well, thank you. And thanks for being on the podcast and for all your wisdom, for sharing so
Thank
much
you.
about money.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I know you've got an incredible lineup here, and it's been a privilege and an honor.
Well, thank you. I have one last question before we finish. What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Okay. Well, I'll have the first piece is know that God loves you and trust him. When it comes to the money side of things, don't let the fear of money get in your way of learning and identifying how do you put in place a plan and then review that every year. And so I would say on the yeah, those are a couple of pieces that can make a massive difference for somebody.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay.